If you are recording video, there is a high chance that you are holding your camera either handheld, on a tripod or on a gimbal. For example, in this moment my camera is on a tripod. Years ago we saw the explosion of the gimbal fad. Every single filmmaker who could be found at events or wedding kept his or her camera on a gimbal. Even if, going later to look at the videos he or she went on to make, the use of this tool proved to be unnecessary, superfluous. And I must admit that I actually was one of those filmmakers. I've done in the last 2 years basically every video project with my Ronin. And I've realized at the end of last year's events season that I could have not used this tool without lowering the quality of the majority of my clips. So, in today's video I want to talk with you about the reason why I think gimbals are great instruments, very useful instruments, and in which cases the use of these tools is unnecessary and excessive. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Stefano and I am a filmmaker from the Italian Alps. If you don't want to miss any other content that I will be uploading on this platform, be sure to subscribe to my channel and to activate the little bell. Now let's start with the video. No one can't deny that a good gimbal is a great instrument to stabilize your clips. A lot of modern cameras have a stabilized sensor, but the movements you can make with a gimbal are much larger and more extreme. Considering also that a lot of cinema cameras, for example, like the C70 from Canon or the R5C also from Canon, doesn't have a stabilized sensor, a gimbal is a very great tool to get stabilized clips. However, in many cases, this overstabilization comes across as unnecessary and fake. Anyway, we can't deny that a good gimbal is a great instrument to get stabilized clips. For sure, with this tool you can get smoother clips than handheld, unless you're a robot. The case where I still absolutely want to use a gimbal is when I have to follow people while walking. There is no camera sensor that is so stabilized to allow you to get smooth clips when you're following a person when he or she is walking. I don't know if some of you used to take videos of people walking when they are speaking, but especially if you are doing contents for social medias, this is a very dynamic and original way to interview people, for example, to make your subject interact with the place where she or he is. Wide-angle shots are very cool, useful and good looking. If you are in a nice location, it is a very good idea to introduce your video with a wide-angle clips of the place in which you are recording, maybe for example with a 16mm lens. However, those kind of lenses have a very big problem. If you look at the corners of the clips recorded with a wide-angle lens, maybe for example a 10 or a 16mm, you will notice big distortions. And when you're making camera movements, these distortions will create very unpleasant and ugly effects on your clips. This happens because even if you have a very steady hand, you will always make some minor movements while shooting with your camera handheld. Shooting on a gimbal, on an electronic stabilizer, will make you avoid to find this problem on your clips. As I've said before, shooting handheld will never guarantee you the smoothness of a gimbal. So, you will now have probably noticed that gimbals are very useful tools, very comfortable tools. However, they are not always the best solution for your projects. Shooting on a gimbal, you will never have the full control on the movements of your camera. For example, shooting events last year, I've found myself not having the full control over my camera. This is actually not a huge problem, because once you understand how to control those instruments, you will be able to know what you can do and what you can't do. However, especially for small movements, for detail maybe made with a compressed lens, with a telephoto, gimbals are not useful instruments, are not good instruments. Gimbals are great tools. As I've said before, they allow you to get smooth clips, even making some large and extreme movements. However, using a gimbal, you will be limited to gimbal movements. If you would do, for example, some other kind of movements, more extreme and more complex, you will be forced to remove your camera from your stabilizer. Often when I'm shooting events or outdoor videos, I find myself removing the camera from my gimbal and doing the most of the clips without it. As I've said before, especially those clips that requires a telephoto, like portraits or details. In this way I can make smaller and more precise movements. With a gimbal you can make some specific movements, and if in your video all your clips will have the same movements, your final video will result a little bit boring. If you shoot outdoor videos, events, contents, weddings or any kind of shooting that requires many hours of work with your camera, you have to consider that using a gimbal can be a little bit inconvenient. Shooting, for example, a 1 week long event every day with a gimbal is not an easy thing, believe me. You will return home very tired, and this without considering that each gimbal needs to be carried in his own case. And guess what? These cases are really bulky. Last year I've done the final video of a more than 1 day event, I think it was 4 or 5 days, that didn't wanted to guarantee the photographers and the filmmakers a base in which they could leave safely their equipment. So I had to carry my gimbal case for 5 days with me. If I could go back in time and if I had to remake this event, I would probably force myself to find an alternative solution to the gimbal, because having to carry his case for 5 days long, all the day around a city, was not a good experience. I would look for another solution, more practical and comfortable. In my opinion, a video must be dynamic. And a very good way to make your videos look dynamic is to alternate wide and compressed shots. You can achieve this, for example, by shooting with 2 cameras, one with a 16 to 35 mm and one with a 70 to 200 mm lens. I've done it last year for some events and it was a great experience actually. It was very great to have 2 cameras with 2 completely different lenses. Alternatively, you can use a single camera and change your lens time by time. This is interesting because the sensor of the camera will remain the same and the color of the images will be more constant, will be less different than by using 2 cameras, even of the same brand. If you are using a gimbal, every single time you will change your lenses, you will have to recalibrate your instrument from scratch, and this requires a lot of time and is not practical actually, because if you shoot events you must be fast, you must be, you must be more efficient possible. However, I have to admit, we all the video community must admit that nowadays gimbal movements have been used too much and in too much unnecessary occasions by filmmakers. So, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, I gently ask you to hit the like button and to tell me in the comment section below if you like or if you dislike this kind of tools. See you in the next video. Ciao!